this is the art talk that I gave at the UW Game Dev Club last week, and I'm just going to quickly go over some of the stuff that we talked about. So if you're sitting here thinking, oh god, I don't know how to draw, like I've never drawn before, or my drawings are bad, don't worry. This is a quick guide to help you get started. And really, art isn't as hard as people think it is, so keep an open mind and you'll probably learn something. Alright, so one thing to think about is art isn't a talent, really. I mean, there are people who, may learn quickly and faster than other people, but it's not really this sort of God-given skill that people are born with. Art is something you have to practice, just like playing an instrument or coding or literally any other skill. You got to put time and effort into it. And so here is my basic process. I usually start with some sketch of whatever subject I'm drawing, and then I put down the base colors here, and then I'll add lighting and shading so that it gives context to the environment it's in and it gives it some more depth. And I'll be going over some more theory and okay. So let's talk color for a bit, because color is pretty hard. Color theory is, like, in my opinion, one of the hardest things in art, and I'm still pretty bad at it. So there are three sort of like basic attributes to color. It's hue, saturation, and value. So hue is like the usual color that people talk about, like yellow, red, purple, blue, green. That is called hue. And then saturation is how light or dark, that's value. Saturation is more like how intense the color is. So up here it's more saturated, and then as you go down it gets less saturated. And then value is how light or dark it is. And so these things combined sort of make up color, but how you choose which colors to use depends on like either the mood or the environment or context of what you want to draw. And so, for example, if you're doing like a nighttime drawing, you might use a lot of blues and purples, like colder colors, quote unquote, and then maybe less saturation because there's less color that you can see in the dark, and then the value would be darker. And so here's an example. This is by @PoolBranch on Twitter. This painting, you can see, has pretty muted, like less saturated tones. And you can see the colors are mostly like orange, brown, sort of greenish. And so it's got this sort of like warm feeling, but it's also in value. There's the background is it's a lighter value, and so it sort of looks hazy, but it's also kind of like warm and comforting. And then the main subject here, you can see it's a lot darker than the background, and so it makes it stand out. Here's another example from @PoolBranch on Twitter. This painting is definitely more bluish in color. You see a lot of blues here, purples, yeah, almost all like blues and like cold tones. And you can definitely see the value of the whole painting compared to this one is a lot darker, and so it gives it like a nighttime feel. And then you have the character in the middle, and in this one, both the background and the character are dark in value, right? And so what the artist does is they add these highlights on some of the edges, and it sort of gives the character a basic outline then that people can then sort of imagine the other parts to, and it makes it still stand out even if the values are similar. Okay, here's another example that I want to talk about because I think it's really cool. This is from Gen Z on Twitter. Gen Z is the lead art director at Supergiant Games. This is an initial sketch she did of an illustration of Hades she did. So here's the base sketch. It's like you do this first to sort of get the composition going, and then she does the sketch, and then the line art, and then she puts down the colors. And like you could call it done here, right? Like it's fully colored, it's fully lined and illustrated. There's some shading here going on too, and so you could call it done. But it looks kind of dull, right? The colors aren't very appealing. It's not it's not super good to look at. So look at this, and then this. Huge difference, but there's not, like, I think beginners in art sort of forget this step of like adding lighting and like particles and like extra polished details or renderings. It makes a huge difference in how your art looks. And so you can see here the artist added a lot of purple here in this area, and so I think that really gives it a lot of shine and polish to it. She adds more shine here to, oh god, the ferryman, I forgot his name. But yeah, doing studies like these really helps in like finding your style and what you want to do to like make your art look better. All right, I'm going to talk about pixel art really quick. I don't do pixel art personally that much, but I know it's easy for video game art, and so I will talk about it briefly. For pixel art, it's basically the same as what I've talked about in my process from before of making a sketch and then coloring and adding lighting. But there's a couple of things about it, especially how to line stuff. You wanna make your lines clean. That's like, in my opinion, the most important part of pixel art that's different from like other regular digital art, is you want to make your lines consistent and clean. You want to avoid jaggies. I won't go into detail, but if you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to make good pixel art, these two links have a really detailed step-by-step pixel art tutorial. I highly recommend going through these two. Yeah. Here's a couple more examples of cute pixel art. This is from Garden Story, I believe. What I like about these is they're, first of all, very simple, right? And the color palette is consistent. Their color palette is less saturated. Less saturated, but with light value, and so it gives a more pastel-y look. And all of them have that same quality, and so it looks good together. They look consistent. They look like they're from the same game, And then one tip I want to give that's not really related to pixel art specifically, but just how to make your characters look appealing, is you want eyes that are far apart and a mouth that's pretty up close to the eyes. So this apple is a really good example. You can see the eyes are just 2 pixels, but they're far apart, and the mouth is like right underneath the eyes. It's like, I think, 1 pixel away, and that's how you make your characters look cute, basically. Okay. We're going to talk about anatomy really quick. Again, anatomy is a very difficult part of art, and if you want to get good at it, you got to practice it. But this is how you draw the perfect man. You gotta draw these heads. Okay, I actually don't know what this picture is. I just found it online and I thought it was funny. But this is the real guy that I sort of use. I'll go over just a few basic stuff. Generally, a an adult person is going to be like 6 or 7 heads tall of like their own head. And then like the waist will come about 2.5 heads down. The hips will be about 3 heads down, and then the knees will be somewhere between like 4.5, 5-ish. Yeah, anatomy is again just something you gotta practice. Use references. Draw real pictures, real photos, real people in real life, and yeah, it's something you gotta just like get the hang of by doing it a lot. And that's kind of all of art in general. And yeah, like I mentioned before, use references. Using references is very good, and I don't know why it's like looked down upon. When I was little, like, and whenever I drew anything, adults would be like, "Oh, did you draw that from like looking at something or like or whatever?" And then if I said yes, it would be like as if I did less work or something. But that's not true. Using references is very good. You can see this is a really good example. This artist took sort of the pose of this woman and then added her own elements to it, and her like this plate and the plants and this staff, and all of that. So use references, but don't copy. Like this artist didn't just like straight up redraw this woman, right? She took elements of the woman's pose in the photo and then made her own thing. And if you want a more detailed guide on how to reference art, here's another great link for that. Okay, and I believe this is the last thing. My biggest tip for improving your art is to take inspiration from other artists, right? Because when I like want to draw something but I don't know how to, more often I will look for someone like someone else's art of the thing I want to draw rather than the thing itself, like in real life, because then I can look at their style, how they simplified it, how they colored it, what colors they used, and all of that stuff. And that helps a lot in sort of figuring out my own style. And so these are a few of my biggest inspirations right now. This is Comfy Cartel by Savanto. This is by Caramello or Caramello. This is Hebek from Squid Game. And then this is by Tofu Block. They're all on Twitter. They're amazing artists. Go check them out. All right. Oh, this is the last thing. Here's a few tips for making art for your game, especially if you're like making a game in a weekend or something in like a game jam. You want to keep your resolution consistent. One of the biggest mistakes that I made in my first games is that I would like draw a character in Pixel especially. I would draw a character that was like this big, like this big, and then I would draw some sort of small item like a key, and then I would also draw the key like this big. And then when I put them in Unity, I was like, oh, the key is too big compared to the character, and so I would just like size it down, right? Like using the transformation tool, but then the pixels of the key are now smaller than the character, if that makes sense. So you don't want to do that. And so when you draw assets for your game, make sure easiest way to do it is just to like have a big canvas and then just like draw all of it on the same canvas, and so you can like see right there like the size comparison and everything. All right, second, maintain a color palette. Like I showed in the garden story example, it looks more appealing and it looks more consistent if all of your characters have like some sort of like unifying color like attribute, and it looks like there's from the same game. Keep the mood in mind. If you're making like a horror game, you want to use like darker, less saturated, sort of colder colors. If you're making some like cute like gardening sim, you know, you want to use pastel tones, um, and color is super important to um, like making the mood of your game and like informing your players on how they should feel playing that game. And then lastly, cutting corners is totally okay. Um, like um, our what is it? Last game jam, Thomas, our president, made a game where he was going to make it like 2/3 top down. If that makes sense, like the old Pokemon games. But then he just made it like absolutely top down, completely top down, and then just like rotated his character rather than making 8 different sprites for him. That was really smart to do, I think. Um, and like I said before, using references is totally okay. Like especially when you're making art as a tool for something else like a game. Um, like you want to be as efficient as possible. Um, and that's why like it's so ridiculous when people say digital art isn't real art because you know, well, it's just you have tools and you use those tools to make art. It's different from traditional art, sure, but it's not cheating. It's not like as if it's not real art, whatever, whatever. All right, that was a little rant on my okay. So that is it for this talk, and I drew something in the club. I won't draw it again, but I will go over it really quick. Alright, so here is the drawing I made after the slides talk. Let me just get rid of this for a second. Okay. So here, I'll do a quick tour of Krita. On the left here are all your tools. Up here there's the menu, you know, file, edit, view, all of that. Here's a couple of like extra sort of quick access buttons. Here's your color selector, here are your layers, and then here are your brushes, although I think this is different slightly because I did change my layout, but it should pretty much be the same. Okay, so I'm gonna go through each of these layers. Okay. Here's my sketch. Okay. So quickly, I'm gonna show the difference between pixel art and like regular art, because some people were confused. So this is like a regular pen I would use, and then if I go down here in the brushes, I can click on this drop down and go to pixel art, and then I can choose this pen. I'm gonna size it down a little bit by pressing the left bracket button that's like next to P, and then do this. And you can see this is, I forgot, I always forget which is which, but one of these is anti-aliased and one of these is not anti-aliased. And that's what it's called, where you see like on this one you see these like feathered sort of grayish pixels on the edges, and when you zoom out it looks smooth. But this one doesn't. And so that is basically the difference between pixel art and regular art. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of that. So this is the character that I drew. I just sort of sketched this with this pen right here. And then, let's see, what order are these in? I think I colored the whole thing in just like one color. It doesn't really matter what color. I usually go with like either the skin color of the character or something that'll go with the mood or the lighting of like what the character is in. Let's see, what is this? Oh, this is a sketch that I initially did. I made this character 3 heads tall, just which is like a chibi sort of thing, because you want your characters to usually be kind of short in video games, and so the head is like, you know, one head, and then the torso will be one head, and then the leg will be one head. And that's what I use most often for video games. So that was a sketch. I filled it in. and then I colored it. This is let's see, this is on 80% opacity, and I do that just so that then some of the orange will come through, and that helps sort of like it's like a filter basically, and it makes your colors look more cohesive. So like this versus like, you know, and depending on like how bright you want it or how intense you want it. I'll put it at 70 maybe. Okay, and then I added shadows. I use the multiply mode for the layers. There are tons of different modes for the layers, but I use multiply for shadows. And so you can see the difference, right? And so I will show you what it looks like on just normal. This is what it looks like on normal. If I color pick the color here, it's a very light kind of saturated red orange. And if I turn that back to multiply, it looks like this. And so multiply, I don't know what it does mathematically, honestly, but it sort of just like darkens the areas that you color on. And then next, I believe I added some more, just like to darken the like darker areas a bit. And then I added light. So this one, this layer is on overlay mode, and that's the one I use most often for light. Again, I will show you what it looks like on normal. This is what it looks like on normal. And so it's like a very light desaturated orange or yellow, maybe yellow orange-ish. So if, on overlay, it looks very like, I don't know, kind of bright, and it looks like sunlight. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, that is what I do for light. And then okay, for this, it's a little hard to tell, but it's a trick I like to use on most of my other art. What I do is I duplicated this, the first light layer. I duplicated it using this button right here. And then I went to Appear, Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur, and then like set it to what you think it looks good, and then it gives this sort of like glowy effect. And then what was this? I don't remember what this was. Okay, maybe this is an empty layer. I'll just go to delete that. Okay. And then another tool you can use for coloring is, let's see, we'll use this as an example, is something called Alpha Lock. Right here, you'll see a little A with a line through it. If you mark that, that will make it so that you will only color on parts that you've already colored. So if I don't have that on, it'll look like this. But if I have that on, it'll look like this. But with Krita, it's kind of weird because if you have this background, that also counts as like something that's already like there in terms of color, so it doesn't work even if you have it on. So you have to turn the background off. It's kind of weird. I'm sure there's a way to change that, but I don't know how to. But you could probably Google it. But let's see, is there anything else? I think that's it. I'll go over a few of the tools and how I use them. This is a transform tool. You can resize. Oh, let's select all of these. You can resize and rotate, but if you do, then it will anti-alias. I think you can also change that so it's not anti-alias, but so yeah, there's that. And then right next to it, there's this move tool, allows you to move. And this one doesn't like lower the resolution, so I like using this as much as I can. And this allows you to just crop your canvas layer, or canvas. This is a gradient. This is the eyedrop tool. Eyedrop tool you can also access by holding control, which is really easy, like that. Let's see what else. This is a fill tool. I'm sure everyone knows how to use a fill tool. These are all selection tools. This squiggly like bean looking thing here is the lasso tool. You can draw like where you want to select. And so I like using this one if I like mess up, like, oh, I think the head is too big, I'll like, you know, select it like right here and then, you know, resize just the head or something. There's that. There's a magic wand tool. I don't use that too often, but it allows you to like auto select areas like this. Pretty cool. It's definitely useful for pixel art, but not super useful for not pixel art. Oh, and I am moving around the canvas by holding space and left clicking. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. From here, if you want to save this, you go to File, Save, and then, oh, I just say that. If you want to like keep working on it, you want to come back to it, you save it as a Krita file, which is the default, the KRA, or if you want to, you know, just save the picture, you just click PNG and you can save it as a PNG file. And that is it. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye!